Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast. That is, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. I'm Paul Gigot with my colleagues Kate O'Dell and Kim Strassel here on Potomac Watch. Let's move to our second subject today, the Democrats and Joe Biden and the anxiety that keeps building, at least among professional Democrats. Despite last week's election victories in Virginia and elsewhere, they still look at Joe Biden's polls and get the heebie-jeebies, man, because it is not looking good. The president is still down. Democrats, majority of them, still say Joe Biden should not run for a second term. David Axelrod, the former Obama advisor, again, raises the age issue as a significant liability for Biden. Reportedly, Biden refers to him as the P word, Axelrod, in private, and it's not a compliment. And now, there's always that rivalry between the Biden crowd and the Obama crowd. And the Obama crowd loved to condescend to Biden, as did Obama. And just psychologically, you get a sense that the more David Axelrod speaks up, the more Biden will say, up yours and more to follow. I'm going to run anyway. But in addition to that, you've got Dean Phillips, the Minnesota congressman who's decided to run against Biden. Now he took a shot at Biden over the weekend, said Bidenomics is not working. So he's even getting tougher. You know, he started the campaign, Phillips did, saying that I love Joe. He's great. It's been a success, fabulous presidency, but he's too old. And now he's saying, well, Bidenomics isn't working. And inflation, prices, real wages are falling. That opens up a new salient against Biden, Kim.
Oh, yeah. And you always knew Dean Phillips was going to do this. I think he put his toe in the water and said, okay, I'm going to run for president, but I'm going to try not to alienate the leaders in my party. And then they came down on him like a ton of bricks, as you would expect. And so now he feels like, what's there to lose, right? I mean, let's just get it out there. And why don't I speak for the people? And the reality is that a lot of Democrats, voting Democrats, have lost faith in this president, too. There was a new poll out just today done by a bipartisan polling group, so a Democratic and Republican polling group together that did it for the Financial Times. Only 14% of voters say Biden has made them better off financially. 70, ouch. 14. And 70% said that Bidenomics have actively hurt them. And this is the phrase the president is walking around praising as a badge of honor, my Bidenomics. It is not a badge of honor among most voters. So Dean Phillips is tapping into that. And I think what's really hit Democrats is that everybody keeps focusing on these head-to-head polls showing that in some, Biden continues to beat Trump. But that's like saying, the Republicans have the worst nominee ever, and I'm just about keeping pace with him. Yay. It's not a sign of strength in any way. And that's what has them worried, which is that Democrats are basically betting that they can continue to keep abortion at the forefront. They can continue to make the claim that these are ultra-MAGA Republicans who are a threat to democracy. They can continue to bank on the hope that Donald Trump is going to be the Republican nominee, which gives Republicans a weaker shot. But if all of that doesn't turn out the way they want and the situation overseas becomes worse, the economy worsens, they are really stuck with a lame presidential nominee, and time is running out.
There's a piece, kind of an amusing piece in Politico by Jonathan Martin, their leading political writer. And most of the time, Politico devotes enormous amounts of energy to mocking Republicans because they can't find an alternative to Donald Trump, and saying, oh, the false hope, so on and so forth. Read that Jonathan Martin piece, and you have not seen false hope in such florid demonstration. I mean, he talked to dozens of anti-Trump Republicans and Democrats about what Joe Biden needs to do. And he's, clearly what he's doing isn't working. The piece says they've got to get out of denial and go forward. And then he has such gems as this. Bring in Mitt Romney and Liz Cheney and Joe Manchin and smother them with love and get them to go out there and tell the voters what a risk Donald Trump is. Well, if any voter out there doesn't know what a rich Donald Trump is, then I don't know how much Liz Cheney is going to change it. Another brilliant suggestion is he needs to get out there and start to make the populist case on economics. I guess to say even more trade protectionist, even higher taxes, even more campaigning against business and the rich. There's a real economic winner. That'll help with public economic confidence. I mean, I look at this piece and say, Biden is really in trouble, and they're finally recognizing it, but they just don't know what to do about it.
Well, I can definitely say, having watched for my sins a lot of these economics speeches that the president's making, they are not lacking for demagoguery, particularly, on beating up the pharmaceutical companies, on drug prices. That is definitely not why he's struggling so much with voters. I mean, you see, his approval rating has really struggled since the withdrawal from Afghanistan and that complete debacle. His recovery since then just hasn't happened. And one thing that you think is that voters have formed fixed conclusions about him. And when you look at these polls with Trump, it's correct that we're not hearing as much from Trump. And for now, you have to go look for Trump's comments, and having him back on the national scene in a big way will perhaps remind voters what he's really like. But you have to look at these and think Joe Biden is really fundamentally vulnerable, and that he's gotten himself in a total box by having Kamala Harris on as the number 2, because it's one election where the vice presidential pick actually really matters. And folks are looking around the world at wars in Israel and in Europe, and she does not inspire confidence on that front. So I think it's a more fundamental problem. But to your point, I don't even think a candidacy from Joe Manchin is really going to make them address it.
I mean, if Manchin would suddenly come back into the fold and say, I love Joe, and giving up any prospect of running as a third-party candidate. I mean, Kim, any hope at all that Biden drops out at this stage? I mean, we're approaching the last reasonable period where he could do so and open up all of the primaries to others, given the filing deadlines. It looks to me like he's going to tough it out. There's always a chance of a surprise, I guess. But barring some health episode, looks like he's determined to go for it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Paul. And that makes sense if you know anything about Joe Biden. As you noted, you put your finger on it. The more Obama people tell him he should take a hike, the more he's going to stick around. He can't stand those guys. I think the people that are surrounding him are not advocating he get out. I think that includes the First Lady, who seems all ready for another term. She seems very eager about that. And if you don't have really close people having those hard conversations with you, and then you are also Joe Biden, who, let's be clear, this is, all politicians have big egos. This guy has a very big ego. His entire history and time in the Senate was defined by that. So I just don't see it happening anytime soon, barring, as you said, a health issue, or maybe if there was suddenly some dramatic change in the polls because of another entrant like a Dean Phillips or a Joe Manchin. Although I don't necessarily see that happening either, both because they have a different brand of politics as Biden, and I'm not sure that they're necessarily the ones that can instantly, via their positions or their brand name, pick up a sizable portion of the electorate.
Speaking of Joe Manchin, let's listen to Wes Moore, Democratic governor of Maryland, on ABC this week, talking about Joe Manchin and his potential third-party run.
My message to Joe Manchin is I thank him for his service. And I think he's had a career of distinguished service. Both
42
as a governor,
years in public office.
That's right, both as governor, senator. I would urge him not to mar his legacy by getting involved in something so foolish.
So foolish, why?
Because if you look at what No Labels is, No Labels literally has no plan, has no path, has no policy platform. They don't even have a candidate. What No Labels is, it's a configuration made up of dark money that won't disclose its donors, but is frankly just going to simply hand an election off by being able to not actually come up with a solution, but just continuing to throw wood into this flame of disillusionment. It's not real.
Well, the flame of disillusionment, at least he's got that right. There is a flame of disillusionment out there. But I think that the Wes Moore statement to Kate is pretty clearly a demonstration to me that they're worried. Democrats are worried about Manchin, and that if No Labels gets in, you already got Jill Stein going for the Green Party, Cornel West going for whoever he's going for, trying to get on the ballot. And then you have RFK Jr. saying he's going to run as an independent. And then if Manchin gets in with no labels, you could see if the disillusionment with the two major party candidates continues, that we could really throw this election into directions that we don't know how they'll turn out in some of these states, because you could end up with relatively weak pluralities winning states.
Right. I mean, there's really a lacking argument when you lean into the dark money charge about an unpopular incumbent president. I do think Joe Manchin here could decide to launch a run. Joe Lieberman from No Labels has said that it's not aimed to be a spoiler campaign, that they want a real path for a candidate that No Labels puts up, but that should make the incumbent president all the more concerned about it. You could have an odd set of circumstances where both major party candidates are so unpopular that voters are open to considering someone else. And you also, to your point about RFK Jr. being in the mix, he is running this scorched earth COVID critique that probably will draw more voters from Trump than Biden at this point, but you never know. And you could have Manchin or whoever No Label puts up be a second siphon on both the major party votes. That's another argument where if the Democrats want to avoid that outcome, they need to come up with a different candidate than Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
That's the answer. They just don't want to confront it, so they're going to hold their breath and see if they can pull this out, because Donald Trump is the Republican candidate. I've never thought that was a brilliant strategy, but who knows? Somebody's got to be the next president, unfortunately. All right. Thank you to Kim and to Kate. And thank you all for listening. And we'll have a full another year to contemplate this brilliant campaign. So thank you for listening, and we will have you back tomorrow and every day on Potomac Watch.